Okay, what we're talking about today is all bank loans are a fraud. There is no such thing as a bank loan anywhere. Okay, we're going to talk about that here. To have a proper foundation, this video should be watched after watching Bankster Thieves 1, 2, and 3, Bankrupt Corporate Governments, Bar Members 1, 2, and 3, De facto Courts, We're Under Martial Law Rule, Quasi-Contracts and Roman Civil Law, Peace Officers, and Leos. Uh, um, these would be a good start. Actually, the Unidroit video would be a good one too. To get a foundational understanding, but you can watch this video by itself. But if you have questions about some of the things that are said, the answers will be in these other videos. There's a book called Modern Money Mechanics. It's a 40-page document published by the Chicago Federal Reserve in the 60s. This is the front page. Modern Money Mechanics, a workbook on bank reserves and deposit expansion, and it's published by Chicago Federal Reserve. This is the back page, and it says that it was published in 1961. Okay, and in the bottom there, Chicago Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago. This is page 2, and there's a highlighted portion. Let's get in a little bit closer. And I've actually got that in this next slide. The money creation process takes place principally through transaction accounts. And that's on page 2. And this is on page 6, bank deposits, how they expand or contract. Let's get a little bit closer. I've got it on another slide. The bottom here showing that it's on page 6. Of course, they do not really pay out loans from the money they receive as deposits. If they did this, no additional money would be created. What they do when they make loans is to accept promissory notes in exchange for credit to the borrower's transaction account. So think about it, boys and girls. What they're doing when you sign that promissory note, you create the money, and they deposit that promissory note into a transaction account, and based on that deposit, they cut a check. They are not out one penny. Why do you think they want to sell these mortgages and loans so fast? Because they make 100% profit, and they leave it. They're leaving other people holding the bag, is what they're doing, and that way they can maintain this illusion of these so-called loans. They're all a fraud. They do not exist. Let's go into it further. This is under Title 12, United States Code, Section 83. No national bank may make any loan or discount on the security of the shares of its own capital stock. They cannot loan their money. And when you make a deposit under the Uniform Commercial Code, it becomes the bank's property. It's an unsecured debt to the bank. And so what happens, that's why they did the CDO scam, because the collateralized deposit scam, those it's collateralized. They take a priority over top of a bank deposit. So they're going to do a Cyprus. This is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to Cyprus America. They're going to Cyprus every country on the planet. They're going to steal everything. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves. Anyways, back to the bank loans. Bank loans are a fraud. Banks do not loan anything. There is no such thing as a bank loan in America or anywhere. When you sign the promissory note, you create the money. They deposit the promissory note into a transaction account, and based on that deposit, they cut a check. Tom Schaff wrote a book called Banker's Secrets. You can go to Google and do a search, and you'll come up with several websites probably that you can download the book. It lists 160 questions that you can ask a CPA and also the bank in court to prove that they loaned nothing. And so once a fraud, always a fraud. These are maxims of law. Okay. This is old as time itself. Once a fraud, always a fraud. Things invalid from the beginning cannot be made valid by some subsequent act. A thing void in the beginning does not become valid by lapse of time. Time cannot render valid an act void in its origin. Some more maxims of law. Out of fraud, no action arises, and any act by any government official to conceal the fraud becomes an act of fraud. And it is a fraud to conceal a fraud, and fraud is inexcusable and unpardonable. Fraud and deceit should excuse no man. And any fraud amounts to injustice. Fraud and justice never dwell together. What is otherwise good and justice sought by force or fraud becomes bad and unjust. The fictitious federal debt is a fraud. When the government creates a bond, they create the money. All mortgages are a fraud. The so-called subprime crisis was a fraud. Sequestration by the Republicrats is a fraud. Okay, Republicats and the Republicans and Democrats, it's two sides of the same coin. So I guess we ought to call them Republicrats. The Republicans and the Democrats are playing with the Democrats to drive the economy into the dirt. That's exactly what they do. And Obama wanted to have some plausible deniability, so he got his Republican buddies to do it. Every dollar in circulation has to be loaned into circulation. The banksters are thieves. The U.S. Congress is bought and paid for by the bankster thieves. All so-called courts are bought and paid for by the bankster thieves. They operate exclusively under the Uniform Commercial Code. This is all coming from the United Nations. Now think about it. Think about it. If no justice can ever come out of fraud, well, the courts engage in fraud all the time. So that's not a court. It's a corporation. They're nothing but a bunch of thieves is what they are. That's exactly what they are. They're owned and operated by the bankster thieves. They're selling their just us is what they're doing. Don't get me going. The Federal Reserve Bank was created in the middle of the night on Christmas Eve in 1913. It took less than 20 years for them to bankrupt the country. This is taken from the Congressional Record, March 17th, 1993. And it says it's an established fact. The United States federal government's been dissolved by the Emergency Banking Act of March 9th, 1933. Well, shoot, think about it, boys and girls. 1913 in Christmas, March 9th, that was like about 9 months less than 20 years. Declared by Roosevelt being bankrupt and insolvent. The joint resolution to suspend the gold standard and abrogate the gold clause dissolved the sovereign authority of the United States. In other words, when they're not using lawful money, they are not sovereign anymore, boys and girls. And the official capacities of all United States governmental officers, and departments is further evidence that the United States federal government exists today in name only. Federal Reserve notes are IOUs. Watch Bankster Thieves 1 and 2. Anything purchased with Federal Reserve notes is purchased on United States credit. If you buy something on United States credit or the credit of any other corporation, who owns it? They own it. If the United States is owned and operated by the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank, then the Bankster Thieves own everything you buy. And this is taken from the Gold Reserve Act of 1934. As used in this act, the term United States means government of the United States. The term currency of the United States means currency which is legal tender in the United States, includes the United States notes and Federal Reserve notes. Mortgages are found in Roman law. Negotiable instrument law is a subset of Roman law. Federal Reserve notes, Bank of Canada notes, Bank of England notes are meant for internal use of the government only. By using a negotiable instrument to purchase things, the de facto courts presume you consent to their martial law rule as found in as we're in the martial law and the de facto courts videos. Because you purchased everything with their private money system, technically the banksters own what you purchased. That's why they're taxing you. By orchestrating the subprime mortgage crisis, the bankster thieves are just taking what they already own, technically. This is all made possible because of Roman law, the United Nations, and the Vatican, okay? These people are nothing but thieves. These loans are a fraud, okay? It's all a fraud. Everything they do is a fraud. Because you accept the Federal Reserve notes as compensation for your labor, the de facto kangaroo courts can presume that you're a government employee. The United States has not had a treasury since 1921. Look it up, boys and girls. It's at 41 Stat 214, page 654. The United States Treasury, a Department of the Treasury, is now called the International Monetary Fund. Look it up, boys and girls. The Department of Homeland Security and all of its subsidiaries is a subsidiary of the United States Secret Service. The United States Secret Service is a subsidiary of the Treasury Department. You see where we're going here, boys and girls? The Treasury Department is a subsidiary of the IMF. Internal Revenue Service is an agency of the International Monetary Fund. Look it up, boys and girls. There's your place where you can find it. United Nations, through the International Monetary Fund, issues Social Security numbers. The Department of the Treasury issues the SS5, not the Social Security Administration. Well, who owns the Department of the Treasury, boys and girls? The new SS5 forms do not state who or what publishes them. The earlier SS5 forms did state it. All Social Security checks come directly from the IMF and the UN, and it says it right on the front of the check. Isn't it amazing how all these terror alerts start coming out of the woodwork when they're funding bills before Congress? Isn't that amazing? It's just an amazing thing how that happens. Whoa, boy, it's magic. Fraud, an intentional perversion of the truth, the purpose of inducing another into reliance upon it to part with some valuable thing belonging to him or to surrender a legal right. When one conveys a false impression by disclosure of some facts and the concealment of others, such as concealment, is in effect a false representation by what is disclosed as the whole truth. Well, they're calling it a loan, boys and girls, and it's not a loan. They are not loaning anything. They are facilitating the credit. That's all they're doing. They are thieves. Suppression of a material fact which a party is bound in good faith to disclose is equivalent to a false representation. That's every bank loan is full of fraud. It's all over the place. Fraud and deceit may arise from silence where there's a duty to speak the truth as well as from speaking an untruth. Fraud may be committed by a failure to speak when the duty of speaking is imposed as much as by speaking falsely. Where a relation of trust or confidence exists between two parties so that one places peculiar reliance and trustworthiness of another, the latter is under duty to make full and truthful disclosure of all material facts and is liable for misrepresentation or concealment. Concealing a material fact when there's a duty to disclose may be actionable fraud. Okay, so boys and girls, anybody that's going through one of these foreclosures by one of these bankster thieves, that's the argument, isn't it? But you got to attack them because it's their courts. These are kangaroo courts. They couldn't care less about justice. They're helping their bankster thieves, buddy. This is taken from the scriptures, from the Bible. It says, ye are of your father the devil, and the lusts of your father you will do. He was a murderer from the beginning and abode not in the truth, because there is no truth in him. When he speaketh a lie, he speaketh of his own, for he is a liar and the father of it. That's the bankster thieves, boys and girls. It's all satanic. But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and the murderers and the whoremongers and the sorcerers and the idolaters and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. So they're all going to get to spend some time in hell, I guess. I'm looking forward to it. Everything they do is a fraud and a lie. The so-called courts are full of fraud and lies. If you do not participate in their fraud or lies, they'll deny you justice. They do it every day, boys and girls. The whole financial system is a fraud and a lie. The only true loans happens when it's not involving a corporation. In other words, if I loan my neighbor some money, then obviously I didn't create anything, did I? And so therefore he has to pay me back. I mean, that's only right. It's a real loan. But the bankster thieves do not loan money. They cannot loan money. All corporations are fraud and a lie. I believe the banking institutions are more dangerous to our liberties than standing armies. This is Thomas Jefferson, boys and girls. If the American people ever allow private banks to control the issue of their currency, first by inflation, then by deflation, the banks and corporations that will grow up around will deprive the people of all the property. Their children will wake up homeless on the continent their fathers conquered. The issuing power should be taken from the banks and restored to the people to whom it properly belongs. And Jefferson hit the nail on the head. I guess you could say he was a prophet, because certainly all of this came true. This is Robert H. Hemphill, credit manager of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta. If all bank loans were paid, no one would have a bank deposit, and there would not be a dollar of currency or coin in circulation. This is a staggering thought. We are completely dependent on the commercial banks. Someone has to borrow every dollar we have into circulation, cash or credit. If the banks create ample synthetic money. We are prosperous. If not, we starve. Why do you think that the economy is a basket case? It has nothing to do with anything except that the banksters are not creating enough money. We are absolutely without a permanent monetary system. When one gets a complete grasp upon the picture, the tragic absurdity of our hopeless position is almost incredible. But there it is. The banking problem, is the most important subject intelligent persons can investigate and reflect upon. It is so important that our present civilization may collapse unless it is widely understood and the defects remedied very soon. What do you think is happening? We're going through a collapse. That's exactly what's happening, boys and girls. And this is not the first time this has happened. Okay, matter of fact, there's a lot of good reason that they made war on Hitler, because killing off 6 million Jews, they couldn't care less. They killed off 2 million people in Cambodia. They've killed off millions of people all over the planet. So I mean, 6 million Jews, they couldn't care less. And according to the Vatican, they want to reduce the population. So that's chump change. In my opinion, killing off 2 people of any race is an abomination. Anyways, this is Churchill's chief counselor, Robert Lord Vansittart, in September of 1940 to Foreign Minister Lord Halifax. And he said, quote, "The enemy is the German Reich and not Nazism, and those who still haven't understood this haven't understood anything." Okay, well, we got some more sites here. This is Winston Churchill, the Second World War, Bern, 1960. That's his book. Germany's unforgivable crime before World War II was its attempt to loosen its economy out of the world trade system and to build up an independent exchange system from which the world finance couldn't profit anymore. We butchered the wrong pig. Right, exactly. So Germany was just printing their money and issuing it into circulation. They were basically printing money, and it's like U.S. Treasury notes. Okay, why do you think Lincoln was assassinated? Okay, that's exactly why, and Kennedy and others. We'll talk about that. Not the political doctrine of Hitler has hurled us into this war. The reason was the success of his increase in building a new economy. The roots of war were envy, greed, and fear. Major General J.F.C. Fuller, historian, England. Okay, so can't have someone doing that's why we've made war on Gaddafi, and that's why we're currently doing Syria. Okay, Syria has their own national bank. It's a state-owned national bank, and they just print whatever money they need. Switzerland is going to be coming up. You can be guaranteed about it, because Switzerland has the same kind of system. I circulated a video called something 7. Anyways, it was a banker, Confessions of a Swiss Banker, and he talked about it. They've been doing it for 700 years. We made a monster, a devil out of Hitler. Therefore, we couldn't disavow it after the war. After all, we mobilized the masses against the devil himself, so we were forced to play our part in this diabolical scenario after the war. In no way we could have pointed out to our people that the war was only an economic preventative measure. And that's U.S., and I don't know why they're calling it Foreign Minister James Baker. Anyways, he was definitely, he was one of the Secretary of State, I think. Anyways, he was either General Reagan administration or the first Bush administration. The war wasn't only about abolishing fascism, but to conquer sales markets. We could have, if we had intended to, prevented this war from breaking out without doing one shot, but we didn't want to. Okay, and that's Churchill to Truman, March 1946. The American Revolution was primarily fought over King George III's Currency Act. The refusal of King George III to allow the colonies to operate an honest money system which freed the ordinary man from the clutches of the money manipulators was probably the prime cause of the revolution, and that's Benjamin Franklin. Very soon, every American will be required to register their biological property in a national system designed to keep track of the people that will operate under the ancient system of pledging. By such methodology, we can compel people to submit to our agenda, which will affect our security as a chargeback for our fiat paper currency. Every American will be forced to register or suffer not being able to work and earn a living, and that's exactly what these Satanist pigs do. They will be our chattel. We will hold the security interest over them forever by operation of the law merchant under the scheme of secured transactions. Americans, by unknowingly or unwittingly delivering the bills of lading to us, will be rendered bankrupt and insolvent forever to remain economic slaves through taxation secured by their pledges. And that's Colonel Edward Mandel House in a private meeting with Woodrow Wilson. And I can tell you with firsthand knowledge that I've been in the courts several times, actually numerous times, over these bankster thieves and these these whores in Texas. And I'm talking about the Northern District of Texas and the Fifth Circuit. These Satanist pigs just routinely dismiss it because they don't get their excise tax. Okay, they're nothing but a bunch of Satanist pigs. How about Terry Means, the Satanist whore, or McBride, the Satanist whore? Let's see if I can think of some more names. The Satanist whores. These are federal whores, and they're bought and paid for by these bankster thieves. They will be, this is Edward House again. They will be stripped of their rights and given a commercial value designed to make us a profit, and they will be none the wiser, for not one man in a million could ever figure out our plans, and if by accident one or two would figure it out, we have in our arsenal plausible deniability. So that's what these whores in the Northern District of Texas do, is they put you on their round robin. And so then what happens after they violate your rights in one case? Joe Fish is another one. After they violate your rights in one case, then they make sure you get a different whore next time, so then they can claim plausible deniability. After all, this is the only logical way to fund government, by floating liens with fraudulent, fictitious debt in the form of benefits and privileges. This will inevitably reap to us huge profits behind our wildest expectations and leave every American a contributor to this fraud, which we will call social insurance. Gee, that sounds like Social Security. Without realizing it, every American will insure us for any loss we may incur, and in this manner, every American will unknowingly be our servant, however begrudgingly. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption. That's thanks to these Northern District of Texas pigs, whores. The people will become helpless and without any hope for their redemption. We will employ the high office of the president, that's Obama the pig, of our dummy corporation to foment this plot against America. What do you think? Do you think that's going on, boys and girls? Of course it's going on. And this is Wilson, the pig. In 1921, this stupid brain-dead idiot went and signed on to this. I am most unhappy man. I have unwittingly ruined my country. A great industrial nation is controlled by a system of credit. The growth of the nation, therefore, and all our activities are in the hands of a few men. We have come to be one of the worst ruled, one of the most completely controlled and dominated governments in the civilized world, a government by the opinion and duress of a small group of dominant men. Well, that was in 1921, boys and girls. What do you think it's like now? After World War I and the Treaty of Versailles, Germany was forced to repay the cost of the war and was bankrupt because of the fictitious so-called debts. Hitler's crime was that he did not borrow money from the bankster thieves. He printed it. And as a result, the German economy was turned around in less than 3 years. Kennedy circulated $6 billion worth of U.S. Treasury notes. Johnson's first act while on the plane to D.C. from Dallas after they murdered Kennedy was to recall those notes. Lincoln was killed because he circulated $400 million in U.S. Treasury notes. President Garfield was killed because he wanted to. Under Gaddafi, Libya had debt-free currency, and they had him killed. Saddam Hussein was preparing to circulate a gold-backed debt-free currency until he was killed. Christ was killed 3 days after he threw the money changers out of the temple. The bankster thieves will stop at nothing. There are two ways to conquer and enslave a nation. One is the sword, and the other is by a fictitious debt. Actually, I inserted fictitious. That's John Adams, 1826. The money power prey upon the nation in times of peace and conspire against it in times of adversity. It is more despotic than monarchy, more insolent than autocracy, more selfish than bureaucracy. It denounces as public enemies all who question its methods or throw light upon its crimes. It has a result as a result of war, corporations have been enthroned. An era of corruption in high places will follow, and the money powers of the country will endeavor to prolong its reign by working upon the prejudices of the people until all wealth is aggregated in a few hands and the republic is destroyed. And that's Abraham Lincoln. And they've accomplished all of that. All bank loans are a fraud. There are no bank loans. There is no federal debt. All foreclosures by banks are a fraud. The U.S. Congress is bought and paid for by the Bankster Thieves. The Banksters, with their bought and paid for Obama and their bought and paid for U.S. Congress, are in the process of setting up a blood sacrifice to their satanic gods, and they will get the American Satanists to help them. And if you have any doubt that there's American Satanists, watch Mark Passio's YouTube channel, his videos, because he talks about how 2/3 of Americans are practicing Satanists. I don't care if you want to call yourself a Christian, you're not. You're a Satanist. When injustice becomes law, then resistance becomes duty. Is there any wonder why Christ threw the Bankster thieves of his day out of the temple? Christ even called them thieves. So what can we do? Well, we can refuse to participate in their de facto system. It's not easy, but there's a lot of ways that you can do it. We can use any other money system but Federal Reserve notes, Bank of Canada notes, or Bank of England notes. How about gold or silver coin as much as possible? We can use qualified endorsements and all checks and negotiable instruments. And something like that would say for deposit, for credit on account, or in exchange for non-redeemable Federal Reserve notes at face value. That's one way to do it. Another way is I've seen people do it, redeem for lawful money, and under 12 USC section 411. Either way, they're turning that check into a bill of exchange. We can educate ourselves so we know when our rights are being violated. We can work with our friends and neighbors to establish common law juries in our common law courts. That's why I get denied justice every time I go into these kangaroo courts, because there's not a common law court around to go into. And that's because all of you sheeple out there are such brain-dead idiots. That's why I'm circulating these videos, to try and educate people. We can educate our public servants, because many of them do not know any more than we do. We can educate other people by circulating this video in any other way possible. We can work. Really what's happening is people are being denied justice. Millions, not just a few, millions of people are being denied justice, and it's because we, the people, are asleep at the wheel. Okay, and Judgment Day's coming. What do you think is going to happen on Judgment Day when we're standing there before God and we're going to say all this stuff happened to us? Well, did you do anything to make it better? Did you convene your common law juries? Did you try and get people together to and if you can't say you did a bunch of things, then you're going to be as guilty as them. We can work with our friends and neighbors to get United Nations out of America and Canada and anywhere that wants to be free. United Nations is owned and operated by these Bankster thieves and their Vatican handlers. We can educate ourselves about what a common law jury is and what the law of the land is. We can demand a common law jury of our peers, which is a trial by jury, not a trial with jury, okay? And there's a difference. A trial by jury, the real under common law, the jury calls the witnesses, questions the witnesses, determines the law and the facts in the matter, and even pronounces a sentence. A trial with jury is what you see nowadays. Judgment Day's coming for these Bankster thieves, and I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing some of them do the little dance they do at the end of a common law rope. There are common law courts springing up all over. These thieves are going to be brought to some real justice. I'm glad it's not up to me. We can never take the law into our own hands, because that makes us worse than they are. And sometimes this is how I feel, okay? And whatever, go ahead, take me out, make my day. The sooner I'm out of here, the better. This is hell, in my opinion. Copies of these documents can be found in my private group at Yahoo called Administrating-Your-Public-Servants. I have videos of private information shares that show these and other court citations that are available for a donation. Donations to support this work are appreciated. I prefer gold or silver coin, but as an extremely less desirable alternative, I can accept your IOUs, Federal Reserve notes, PayPal, gifts, checks, money orders, etc., and send me a particular email for particulars. Right? So this is a way that you can try not to participate in their system, boys and girls. Is tell them you want gold or silver coin, but you'll accept their commercial paper if you have to. Send an email to other copies of documents to engineerwin@gmail or engineer@yahoo. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to my little rant. I hope you got something out of it. circulate this around. People need to become aware that there are no bank loans. Okay, this is all a fraud. Everything that's going on is a fraud. They're liars, they're thieves, they're Satanists. This is diabolically evil. There's people being denied justice, including me, but millions of people, all of these people in their so-called jails have been denied justice. It's on a huge scale, and this is all these bankster thieves and their so-called loans. That's all it's all about. And so I appreciate you taking the time to watch this, and I hope you got something out of it, and have a real nice day.